Welcome into the Saints Insider Podcast live reaction show, or live breaking news show, I guess we should say, for day 2 of the NFL draft. I'm Zach Ewing. That's Gabe Henderson. Glad you could be back with us a night after our marathon live stream for round 1. We're into the second round now, and we were awaiting the Saints pick at number 45, Gabe, and just got the notification that the Saints have traded up. They will pick at number 41. They've traded with the Green Bay Packers. So we thought, oh, hey, the Saints are going to trade down and get more picks. That's not the case. They have traded up 4 spots. 4 spots maybe didn't give up a ton, but the Saints are on the clock at number 41.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. You know, they jumped Houston. I don't know if they're looking to go secondary here. I wouldn't imagine so. We talked about that a lot yesterday. I think that's what Houston's going to be after. I just maybe
Dave, I have the terms of the trade here. I'm sorry to interrupt, but the Saints are trading 168 and 190. So 2 of those 5th round picks. Actually, that's a 5th rounder and a 6th rounder, I believe, that they've just traded. A late 5th rounder and their 6th rounder. So not a ton to move up 4 spots here. The only thing is you can't move back, and you're probably done in the 3rd and 4th round now unless you start trading next year's picks. But yeah, it looks like they will. They won't
got the pick. It is. There we go.
Let's see what we got. It is Kool-Aid McKinstry, the Alabama cornerback. That's who the Saints have gone up to get. And Gabe, let the questions begin now about Marshawn Lattimore's future.
Well, we heard they were beginning. Well,
they've already begun, but let them continue.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty clear. That's a pretty clear message about the way that they feel. And you know, maybe they get some extra mid-round picks next year for Lattimore here in the coming weeks. But wow, I mean, what a statement.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they're the first 7 picks of this second round. We're going to show the full round to you here in a minute, but the first 7 picks were all wide receivers or defensive tackles, and those were the 2 positions that I think a lot of people, myself included, thought would be most likely for the Saints to come get in the second round, or to pick at 45. Would be, hey, it's going to be a defensive tackle who can help them with their run defense, or it's going to be a wide receiver. Those are probably their 2 biggest needs outside of offensive tackle, which you addressed in the first round. Instead, they go get a cornerback. The cornerbacks have started to fall. Cooper DeJean was just taken the pick before for the Eagles. You still hadn't seen Kool-Aid McKinstry. A lot of people had a first-round grade on him. So the Saints at some point just said, if we want to have the option to trade Lattimore, and look, maybe even if we don't, this is a first-round guy. Let's button up a strength of this team, our secondary. Obviously, if you trade Lattimore, maybe Alontae Taylor moves back to the outside and McKinstry plays in the slot. Just a lot of possible moving parts.
Yeah, and just an update, because a lot of people will be asking why he slid this far, and it's really because he had surgery this offseason. He is expected to be ready for camp, but a lot of teams were weary, and in addition to cornerbacks and defense in general slipping. But let me be the first to say this is a fantastic pick for the Saints. They really showed here that they were going best player available, which they didn't necessarily do in the first round. A lot of people wanted them to. We heard the Dallas Turner shouts from those who weren't all in on just taking offensive tackle, but wow. I mean,
yeah, it's quite a statement. Stunned. Yeah, we'll get some thoughts from one of our writers here in a few minutes. Let them finish writing their quick stories and catch their breath, and then they'll come in. And it is going to be. It's there's a lot to talk about, man. Now the Saints don't have another pick until 149 now, and we did talk about the possibility of them packaging 4 or 5 late round picks, right? Like just throw volume at someone to move up into the 3rd or 4th round. But now they've traded some of that volume already. Stussy says, "Buy Lattimore, let the rebuild begin." Boy, man, I don't think you can call it a full rebuild, but it does help them continue to shed cap space. It's kind of this reset. But Kool-Aid McKinstry now a New Orleans Saint. It's a great,
Yeah.
immediately probably the best name on the team.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, do you know how many drinking the Kool-Aid jokes are going to be made in New Orleans media in the next, what, 6 months?
The New Orleans media has drunk the Kool-Aid the past 2 years in Jeff Duncan's, um, preseason media poll. I don't think a lot of Kool-Aid's going to be drank this year. I think it's going to go the other direction. We'll see, but either way, pretty surprising pick here to me. I'm surprised they moved up. I'm not surprised that Kool-Aid was the target, but I am a little surprised that instead of moving back and trying to get a receiver and a defensive tackle or another offensive tackle, they've gone corner and now really are going to have to address all of their other needs either very late in this draft or in free agency. Or you start trading next year's picks to try to get back in, which is always possible too, and we'll keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, it absolutely is. NFL Network's Ian Rappaport saying that Saints coach Dennis Allen gets someone that he never thought would be there at 41. So, I mean, I think that just shows us that this is a deal that was too good to pass up on. And I think, them making this trade after Philly took Cooper DeJean, I think they were kind of just waiting to see. We saw a lot of wide receivers taken, a lot of defensive tackles taken early in the second round. I mean, that's all we got, as you guys see here. But once that first corner came off the board, I think they realized that it wasn't going to be long before Kool-Aid McKinstry, that domino fell. I personally don't think he would have made it past my Texans at 42. So I think the Saints absolutely made the right move if this is a can't miss prospect like they believe he is.
Yeah, and the Texans have just made their pick, and it's another corner, so that reinforces your point. It's Kamari Lassiter of Georgia. So if the Saints wanted McKinstry, and I also think just looking at sort of best available lists before the draft and that sort of thing, probably the last first-round talent on the board. It depends on who you ask, but going into the second round, some of those receivers, Ladd McConkey, you could probably say Adonai Mitchell might be on some people's first round lists as well. But really, you had Jerzon Newton was considered a first round pick. That there just wasn't really a ton of those first rounders left. Maybe Adonai Mitchell's the last one. Marshawn Nealand, the linebacker or the edge rusher out of Western Michigan, he was on a few first round mocks. Ennis Rakestraw, the Missouri corner, was another one. But if you really liked Kool-Aid and he was very high on a lot of people's lists, then that this was the move to make. And again, all the Saints gave up was a 5th rounder and a 6th rounder this year. They did not get anybody back. But I'll say this, Gabe, I don't think that the end of the Saints roster is their problem. They are still a fairly deep team when it comes to like roster spots 43 through 53. They're going to cut some good players as they do every year. So I'm not concerned about losing those 5th and 6th round picks necessarily.
No, I wouldn't be either, especially when you consider, it's a crapshoot when you're picking in those spots. Not every 6th rounder is going to be Tom Brady, So when you talk about Kool-Aid McKinstry, you mentioned it. He's a first-round talent. He did fall because of the defensive slip and because of the corner slip, but I honestly, I graded him as a first-rounder. And the one thing I will mention as well, the one person I think in here that is still available that is a first round talent is Edgerrin Cooper. I know a lot of people around Louisiana will be familiar with that name. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised to see him soon.
Yeah. That's another good one. And I mean, look, there's other good players. Just because a guy's not a first round grade doesn't mean he can't be a good player. But when you talk about a consensus, hey, this guy's going to go in the top 30, Kool-Aid McKinstry, one of the last ones. Matthew Paris is hopping on. He's one of our Saints beat writers for the Times-Picayune NOLA.com. We're going to get his take on this pick and this move from the Saints. Always aggressive in the draft, Mickey Loomis, man.
And before we bring him on, as we were saying just a minute ago, there is a run on corners that has been reinforced. The Arizona Cardinals just took Max Melton out of Rutgers as well.
Oh wow, okay. So still no Ennis Rakestraw. He's still out there, but 3 straight corners. We've seen a very position-heavy draft, and just
we haven't. I think the Saints got the best of them.
For those just joining NOLA gang, just a 5th and 6th rounder is what the Saints get, and their second rounder. They switched spots. And gave up a 5th and 6th rounder to move up 4 spots and get Kool-Aid McKinstry. All right. Matt Paris is here. Let's fix this screen real quick. There we go. Matt, thanks for joining us. You are at the Saints facility on Airline Drive. Saints, Tigers don't change their stripes, I guess. They move up in the draft in the second round, move up 4 picks, and get the guy they wanted in Kool-Aid McKinstry.
Yep. Hello?
Can you hear us?
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, you cut out there for a second.
Oh, good.
No, yeah, this was a trade that I think created media question mark for Marshawn Lattimore, especially after Mickey Loomis's kind of vague comments the other day, or tried to walk him back about a potential trade. But this was also a pick that I think really fit the Saints' MO. You mentioned that they like to trade up. He's a guy that was once, a former 5-star, comes from an elite program at Alabama. Really just, he went into the cycle as the top-rated corner. It didn't shake out that way, but I feel like they got really good value here. And I actually like the pick. I do think it makes sense if you're planning for the future, because Paulson Adebo will also be a free agent after this coming season if they don't reach an extension.
Yeah, and we all talked about the possibility of the Saints trading back and creating more picks. But this guy was graded as a first-round talent pretty much across the board. And Gabe just read Adam Schefter's tweet that, like, Dennis Allen never thought that Kool-Aid would be here in a range where they could go get him. And it just turned out to be a player too good for them to pass up.
No, absolutely. And, he's primarily an outside corner, which I think is interesting. The Saints kind of had this problem with Alontae Taylor where they tried him inside. It hasn't really worked. So how is McKinstry going to fit in this defense, I think, is interesting. But things will, a lot more open if Marshawn Lattimore is going to be the main question now.
Yeah, that's the $1 million question. And apologies, Matt's audio is a little bit choppy, but look, he's out of the facility on his cell phone, so bear with us. It's all part of the night. But Matt,
I've locked myself up.
Oh, you're locked out too. Okay, that's not good. Look,
that's fine.
We'll figure that out after we get off the air. But what percentage chance would you have put at Marshawn Lattimore being traded before the draft, and what percentage chance are you at now?
I would have put it maybe at 50 or so before the draft, maybe even 60. It didn't, that's just more reading the tea leaves, or it makes a lot of sense cap relief wise if you traded him. I mean in terms of June 1.
Mm-hmm, sure. Yeah, you got to trade him post June 1.
That is why I answer Stussie's question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So why not trade him for a third now? Is because you'd, I think, have to take on a $34 million cap hit, and also you'd have to find a team willing to do that. I mean, the thing for there's not a lot of great market for cornerbacks right now, and so you need a team willing to trade for him. But I think after the draft, once things settled, once teams don't feel like they have maybe a top tier corner that they were hoping to get in this draft, I think the market will open back up for him. And yeah, I think they signaled their intentions here with this pick, but you never know for sure.
Yeah, I mean, in order to trade Lattimore now, you would almost need a team willing to absorb some of that cap money, and that's going to hurt your return, which kind of defeats the purpose. So probably going to wait and get a pick next year, or get another player or something. The other part of this, Matt, and Michael says it here, that he wants them to trade up again in the second round and then sit and wait for the fifth. I mean, the question, with what? Are you at this point, you'd have to start trading next year's picks, maybe next year's second and third, to get into this year's second. I just don't know if that's a situation the Saints want to be in. But on the flip side, they're not going to get any more players until midway through tomorrow's picks. And this roster still has plenty of holes on it too.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the return that they gave Bay up wasn't terrible. They gave up a 5th round, a 6th round. They had 9 overall selections coming into the draft, so you're chipping away at that. But I do think they still have enough ammo here. I think with McKinstry's pedigree and how he fell in the draft, the Saints probably have to be thrilled that they got a player of that caliber fifth round if that's how it shakes out. But Mickey Loomis will probably try and package a little bit more of his. They still have 3 more fifth rounders, and so if he tries to package 3 of those picks and jumps up to round 4, round 3, that wouldn't be surprising.
No, he'll continue to be aggressive. Matt, we're going to let you go and try to get back into that building, but we appreciate you hopping on, man.
Appreciate it.
All right. Matt Paris, the Saints beat writer for the Times-Picayune, jumping on the Saints Insider Reaction Show. Want to let you know quickly that this season's NFL draft coverage is brought to you by Tulane Doctors. Now at East Jefferson General Hospital, Tulane Doctors are bringing academic medicine to more patients in new communities. Look for the shield to know the future of medicine is here. Find your physician at tulanedoctors.com or call 504-988-5000. Well, Gabe, my sense is this day is done for the Saints. I think Matt's right. I think they're going to try to be aggressive, package a couple of fifth rounders, maybe a fourth rounder next year or something, and try to get back into the third round. But honestly, that strikes me as more of a fourth round package anyway. I think maybe they get back in and pick fairly early tomorrow. And, you got to keep an eye on it. It's the Saints. Who's to say they're not going to get aggressive and start trading next year's picks to get back into this second round? This draft considered very good for the top 100 to 120 picks, and then a pretty big drop off. So having a pick at 149 and another one, I think at 155 is, I just don't know that does a lot for the Saints. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're aggressive.
Yeah, and I know Jeff Duncan preached on Datitude earlier when they were talking about trading up. Not only did the Saints know that this draft isn't that deep, every other team knows as well. So you're not going to trick anybody. And I really, as you mentioned, don't think that even 3 fifth rounders is enough to get up to where some people want to get back into the second, potentially. And let me just pull this up while we're transitioning. Jackson Powers Johnson was 44th overall pick to the Las Vegas Raiders.
Yeah, it's an offensive lineman that, some people thought definitely would be a second rounder, maybe on the Saints' radar, maybe not. Again, we had a question on there. Who did they give up? They give up their pick number 45, which, is their second round pick. And then also a fifth rounder, 168, and a sixth rounder, 190. Those are the 2 they give up. So we're going to show you here in just a second what the Saints have left. They still have 3 third rounders left. They still do have 1 sixth rounder left and 1 seventh rounder. So, if you package quite a few of those together, I don't know if you want to give up all of them, but if you package, quite a few of those together, maybe you could end up with a fourth round pick, maybe a late third round pick tonight.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting, and we will hang on here. We're not going to stay on with you all night, but we'll stay on and see what the Saints do or what the Packers do with that Saints pick too. I think that'll be interesting.
And I will say we've got a lot of people in here who are saying trade Lattimore for Ayuk, for Debo or Ayuk. The problem with Debo is the cap hit, and then the problem with Ayuk is the fact that you're going to have to pay him. And we saw someone like Buffalo trade into the second round so they could engage in trade talks all day for some of those receivers who were made available. I just don't think the Saints have the cap space. I don't think they have the draft capital. And I don't think Lattimore is enough to get it done when it comes to trading for some of those guys.
Yeah, that trade makes a lot of sense, in a fantasy football perspective, but I don't think, given the salary cap ramifications, the fact that Ayuk and Debo both want to get paid, and Lattimore's already been paid, that's kind of a tough one to see working. Here's what the Saints have left, by the way. Got Taliesin Fuanga in the first round. They get Kool-Aid McKinstry with pick number 41. And here's what they have left after the trade. They still have a pick at 150. That may actually be 149. I'm going to have to check on that. Then they have 170 in the fifth round, 175. Again, they had 4 fifth round picks, so they're down to 3. They had 2 sixth rounders down to 1, and then they have their 7th round pick. First running back off the board.
Oh, really?
That is Jonathan Brooks.
Oh, it's the Panthers who are trading up, taking him. Wow.
Is that pick 44?
That is pick 45.
Okay, so that is the pick that the Packers got from the Saints. They traded down again. So the Packers
And
stockpiling picks, and it's the Carolina
someone
Panthers
in division
who end up picking Jonathan Brooks at running back. He was considered the top running back in what was a pretty bad running back class, honestly.
I don't know if you saw Jerry Jones yesterday talking about him. I don't think Jerry Jones was quite a funny clip. I don't think he'd realized that Jonathan Brooks hadn't been picked, but he was saying that he was one of the top names on the Cowboys board before a member of the media had to alert him that he hadn't been taken yet.
This graphic is correct, by the way. It's pick 150. That's the Saints' next pick, and that's fairly late in the fifth round. It's about midway through the fifth round. Then they have the 2 late fifth round picks and a sixth and seventh rounder left. We're gonna have Rod Walker jump on here in just a minute as well from the Saints facility.
And you know what? I apologize. Jonathan Brooks actually went at 46, a trade with Indianapolis. 45 was Green Bay taking Edgerrin Cooper from Texas A&M.
Okay, so that was the Louisiana native you mentioned. It's funny how all this works. Is the Saints were sitting at 45 with a pick that was originally in the Sean Payton deal. They got it from the Broncos, and they traded to the Packers, and it's I believe the first linebacker in the entire draft coming off the board there. Edgerrin Cooper, the Louisiana native who played at Texas A&M, and he goes to the Green Bay Packers. He's a Covington native, I believe. In fact, Jim was talking about, he can't be here tonight, but he was talking about calling some of Edgerrin Cooper's highlights in high school. Next need for the Saints. I mean, where does the list start, Brian? Like it's still defensive tackle, it's still wide receiver, and it's still offensive line. They really need starting caliber players. At least I would argue at wide receiver and offensive line. Defensive tackle, maybe the guy's more of a rotational piece. Maybe he's a starter. Depends on how good he is. At this point, you're probably not getting anybody that good. And you hope Brian Proceed continues to develop. So I would say the top of the list is another offensive lineman and a wide receiver. Is that how you see it, Gabe?
Yeah, and since I'm filling in for Jim Derry tonight, I will give his obligatory shout to running back. I know he believes that running back is a bigger need than wide receiver. I personally think he's crazy for that. And now with only 5 picks remaining, I don't know if we see a running back. But
yeah, I can't. I mean, look, in the 6th, 7th round, if you have somebody you like and you want to bring them into the room to compete, or in case there's an injury in camp, I don't disagree that you need another body or two there, but that's really just in case of injury. Whereas when we're talking about, we're talking about wide receiver, you need somebody who's going to be like on the field. So,
yep.
John, I kind of thought this too. Adonai Mitchell might be the pick, but Adonai Mitchell, to me, kind of similar to like Rashid Shaheed. They need more of a possession receiver who's going to go up and make catches in traffic. So not a great fit. All right, Rod Walker's here, joining us from his home. And Rod, the Saints do it again, man. The Tiger doesn't change his stripes. Mickey Loomis trades up in the 2nd round, giving up a 5th and 6th rounder to swap with the Packers. And Kool-Aid McKinstry is the pick. What do you think?
Yeah, I kind of figured they might trade up at some point. I mean, just had all those picks at the back end of the draft. I figured they might go up and grab who they wanted, and that's what they did. And Kool-Aid was a guy that, I saw a few people that had him as a 1st round guy, and a lot of people had him as like, thought he might be the first person to go today, but that ended up being Keon Coleman. But I mean, he ended up, he was there and the Saints went up and got him. So I don't know if cornerback is where I thought they would go in the 2nd round, but it kind of lets you know a little bit about, the direction his team might be about to go in. I'm not sure if Marshawn will be here this year or if his contract's up, I guess, next year. But so I don't know what that means, but they got a really solid cornerback that was, highly touted by a lot of draft experts.
Yeah. I'll ask you the same question I just asked Matt. And actually, real quick, at pick number 48, the Jacksonville Jaguars just took Mason Smith out of LSU, the defensive tackle.
Wow.
So that's the 4th LSU player off the board. And the 2nd one to the Jacksonville. LSU gets 2 to Jacksonville. I'll ask you the same question I asked Matt. What percentage chance did you think there was Marshawn Lattimore would be traded before the draft, and what percentage are you at now?
Before the draft, I just wasn't really thinking about it, but now I'm, kind of thinking that maybe it will happen. You know, the other day, Mickey Loomis kind of talked about, I think his exact quote was, you know, somebody asked him, did he expect Marshawn to be here? And he said, yeah, but then Catherine Terrell ended up following up, like, is that just an answer to avoid the question, basically? And he kind of agreed to that. So, you know, this might be, maybe the Saints are about to, go in a different direction. They got Paulson Adebo on the other side, and I mean, he had a really solid season last year. It's, year 3 for him, so this will be year 4 for him. But so yeah, I mean, maybe they're about to go in a different direction here.
Yeah, and by the way, Paulson Adebo's contract I think is up in 2 more years as well. So, his rookie contract will be up at that point. So it's certainly a maybe short-term and long-term need for the Saints. So I don't think a crazy thing. And Kool-Aid McKinstry, like, he's a guy who was talked about 22, 25, 28. I mean, he's a first-round caliber player that the Saints got here.
Yeah, I mean, I think I almost want to call it a steal. I mean, you're getting a really quality player in the second round, and I mean, you're giving up some picks that you probably weren't going to get this type of quality at. And this is what the Saints do. So I'd have to say 2 picks in. If you're a Saints fan, you have to be satisfied with the 2 moves they've made. They've first one, they feel a very strong need, and this one they're adding either some depth or a guy who could be a starter depending on what they decide to do with Marshawn.
Yeah, and of course the downside to this, Rod, is that the Saints do not trade back, which means they don't pick again as of right now until 150, which is going to be like 3:00 in the afternoon tomorrow before they pick again. Do you think we see them get aggressive, starting to use future picks to get back in this draft, or we just had a comment? Is this a sign that they're going to be more active in free agency, maybe a Hunter Renfrow to try to fill those needs at wide receiver and on the offensive line?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. And I think free agency may be the way they go now. I don't know. I mean, they may get, one more guy that can maybe help, but I think free agency is something they've talked about, something they've always done. I mean, you go back the year they signed Jarvis Landry, that was, kind of late in the process. So I can see the Saints doing that same thing here. And I feel like they have a lot of confidence in their guys they're pro scouting guys, and they probably have some guys that they have their eyes on. They probably feel like they can bring in and fill some of these voids.
All right, so Rod Walker is saying you give the Saints like at least a solid B in this draft so far, if not an A, huh?
I think I'm leaning towards an A right now, actually. And I think with just these 2 picks, I mean, I think they're 2 for 2 right now. I don't think either one of these guys are going to be disappointments in the NFL. I think they picked 2 guys who, I think if you had to start these 2 guys week 1, I think you'd probably be okay with it.
Yeah. And last question, is Kool-Aid the best name for a player that you've ever covered?
Ah, man, that's tough. That's
you have another candidate.
Off the top of my head, I don't, but I mean, he's definitely up there. Saints fans are going to love him. I know a few years back when they had Smoke Monday, I think he was an undrafted free agent from Auburn, and Saints fans loved him, and it was more because of his name. I mean, he was solid in camp, but Saints fans was just raving over him, and it was because of his name. So Kool-Aid will be the same way. I'm not sure if you're a Kool-Aid drinker, but I did put this poll on Twitter, and I asked people, how do they make their Kool-Aid? Do you go water, Kool-Aid sugar, or Kool-Aid sugar water? I had a third option. I forgot what the third one was.
Well, what's your preference?
Oh, I think you go Kool-Aid first, water.
Yeah,
Kool-Aid. I do Kool-Aid
first and then put the water, right?
I do Kool-Aid, water, and then sugar.
And then sugar. Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Some people do Kool-Aid, sugar, water. I think people that put the water in first are weird, but that's just me.
That's the same. Those are the same people who pour the milk before the cereal. Like, what are you doing? Yeah, that's not how that works. yeah. That's right. You put the Kool-Aid and the sugar, and then you pour.
There you go, Brian Russell. You got it right, man.
Sugar last is okay. I think that's okay, but you don't put the water in first. What are we doing here?
I think Brian Russell had something mixed up too. I gave him credit too early. That's
a little weird. All right, Rod, we appreciate you joining us, man, and we'll jump back on if the Saints do something else tonight. But that's the story right now. Is Kool-Aid McKinstry the newest New Orleans Saint? Thanks, Rod.
All right, thanks, man.
All right, we're gonna sign off for now. We are gonna hop back on with another live stream if the Saints should trade back in tonight. So keep it locked to the SaintsOnNOLA.com YouTube channel. Subscribe, hit the like button. We got our giveaway coming up for those. Last night was the last chance to get into the giveaway, but stay subscribed. If you're not subscribed, we can't give it to you. And tell your friends about us. we're going to be live later in the night if the Saints should trade back into the second or third round. But until then, our thanks to Tulane Doctors. Our thanks to everyone tuning in. He's Gabe Henderson. I'm Zach Ewing. And this has been the Saints Insider live reaction to the second round of the NFL Draft.